Network, along with my colleague Donald Eng. I'm Rob Adams. It is a hump day edition, very rainy edition. There are actually some games still due to be played today, despite the bad weather, but that's what we do. So long as we don't see the thunder and lightning, Don, the games must go on.
Well, that they do, and that's one of the things. I guess that's one of the advantages now with a lot of these schools having these artificial turf surfaces that they do tend to hold up pretty well. So as long as you don't mind getting a little damp, the games will continue.
We will spend, before the end of the show, I want to spend at least just a minute or two on some of the events that took place last night. I do think they carry into some local stuff that I want to get to. But for sure, one thing I am absolutely reminded of from last night's events, it happens to the best of them. You can lose power and have all kinds of technical problems, even on a national level. They found a way to get through it. Look, they had a backup plan that they could go to MLB International, but
we would have had Ed Harris working on the backup plan in the simulator as we speak. When these glitches do happen, we get right to work on them.
You could go do worse than Ed Harris and Gary Sinise. I agree.
You could. It's not bad.
But back to that in a few minutes. Let's get into the local stuff. We now know our game for tomorrow. We knew it by the end of yesterday, by the time we went off the air, but we know it. We know all the participants. We know the time. So it's 3:30 tomorrow afternoon in boys soccer as the Staples Wreckers go to Darien High School to take on the Blue Wave. We'll have the broadcast for you. I'll join the call later in the game. Josh Fisher and Tim Murphy are going to actually call the play-by-play. I'll be around for hopefully some of the sideline stuff and so on in the second half.
Right. Darien, of course, having had a great season, 10-1-5. Only lost that one game. Now they finished second place by a point to Danbury, but Danbury lost 2 games. Darien lost 1. So it's really, who can pick between those two schools? And obviously a tough game. Staples 8-4-4 on the year. Really, it should be a very exciting, very competitive game.
And it really should be a very exciting and competitive tournament. We alluded to that yesterday. I do think this is going to be a really good tournament among these boys soccer teams.
Right, particularly when you look at some of these results. I mean, some of the schools did separate themselves a little bit from top to bottom in the standings, but these schools are all very competitive with each other. The games have all been very close and compelling games. As we mentioned a couple of times yesterday, while top seed Danbury played 8 seed Ridgefield in a game that we were present at. We didn't broadcast it, but we were there for.
Right.
And Danbury won 3-0. But again, a competitive game. The difference being when Danbury got their chances, they put them away. Ridgefield banged a couple shots off a post, and that was the difference.
Greenwich wound up with the 6th seed as a result of a 3-1 New Canaan victory. So that's where we stand there. So the boys are all set with. Greenwich won over New Canaan. Staples and Darien 3:30 tomorrow. Staples at 8-4-4. Darien is 9-1-5. They are the number 2 seed. The 8-1 game will be Ridgefield at 8-6-2, taking on number 1 Danbury, who are 11-2-3. That's 4 o'clock in Danbury. Number 5 Fairfield Ward at 9-3-4 will play number 4 Fairfield Ludlow at 10-3-6. That's a 6 o'clock game. Good in-town matchup in Fairfield. And number 6 Greenwich 8-3-5 will travel to number 3 Wilton, who are 10-3-3. They have yet to set a time officially, at least on the notes I'm looking at right now. But that's your boys soccer tournament starting tomorrow.
Right, and Wilton and Ludlow actually finished tied. They both had identical 10-3-3 records. Wilton got the tiebreaker on the strength of their best quality win. That, of course, Wilton defeated Danbury during the regular season. So that broke the tie there. Both those schools had 33 points. Ward with 31 points, only about a half game back. So again, up and down tournament brackets, we've got competitive games everywhere. So I mean, who knows? You have to say right now Danbury is the favorite, but it's anyone's tournament.
I totally agree. I totally agree. We've seen Danbury. Danbury's good. I've seen them a couple of times in person, in fact. They're good. I just don't see where they're the dominant team. They've lost twice. They've tied 3 times. Ridgefield can give them a game, although Ridgefield-Danbury a rematch. We saw that game. It was a 3-0 Danbury win, actually. Ward and Ludlow, that's anybody's game for sure. Greenwich and Wilton, I mean, if Greenwich can get their key players off and running, that can be a good game. And I think, like you said, Staples-Darien, I think it's a good one.
It really is. I mean, there's just not a bad game in the. There's just not a bad game anywhere in the bracket.
No, I agree. So that's the way that is set up for the soccer tournament, and then we'll roll into the semifinals with that as well. We'll keep an eye on the quarterfinal games as best as we can. Of course, one starting at 4, one starting at 6, and the Wilton game, not sure of the start time there yet, but it'll be kind of tough to keep track of some of those other games. But bottom line is we will have the semifinals and then the championship, as well as the girls' championship 1 week, I believe, from today.
Right, and just as long as we're
can't keep it all straight.
As long as we're talking about boys soccer, we'll just give a quick shout out to John Jay High School from our sister publication, the Lewisboro Ledger, right over the border there. Jay boys soccer lost their first round game, Section 1 New York boys soccer tournament. They lost to Tappan Zee. That's the number 3 team in New York. So John Jay boys finished with a record of John Jay boys finished with a record of 7-8 and 3 on the tournament, and they go down in the first round to Tappan Zee. So just a little shout out to our friends there at the Lewisboro Ledger, J.B. Cousins with the reporting.
Absolutely, and New York handles things differently in that they do have leagues, and you have league championships, and then the league championships go on and they play sectional championships and things like that. So it's a different format there. It's also a much larger state to keep track of, and yet even they don't have 8 champions.
No, it's
sorry, that was on the tee for me, Don. I was ready.
Go ahead. Sorry, that was my deer in the headlight impression. Did you like that one? I was pretty good about that. I was proud of it. Speaking of which, also, there's one other thing I just wanted to quickly point out. Girls soccer, the Stratford High girls soccer team defeated Colby Cathedral 9-0 at Penders Field Monday night. The Red Devils with 2 goals apiece from Sarah Wright and Faye Rooney, Grace Belport, Carly Flores, Amelia Overby, Shannon Tripodi, Carly Lubas, and Michelle Bazanka also with goals for the Red Devils. The reason why I'm mentioning that, Stratford High School with a record of 4-12, not going to the state tournament this year. But according to head coach Steve Johnstone, that is Stratford's best season in 30 years of the program. Building a program from scratch, particularly in more of a city school, city area with girls soccer, it can be a big challenge. So while 4-12 doesn't sound great on the face of it, congratulations, Stratford High School.
Absolutely. Sometimes some of these cities, it's a little tougher. Stratford tends to lean a little more baseball, basketball, I've found, at least my experience with Stratford. Certain cities get very into soccer. Sometimes Bridgeport is a soccer city. Sometimes it's not. Danbury's a big soccer city. So all kind of depends on the makeup. But good for Stratford High, the Red Devils. Congratulations to them. That's a quality job to keep building a program there. So give them a lot of credit. Staying in girls soccer, we get a little closer, and in fact, we do know who all the participants will be in the FCAC tournament. We talked about it yesterday, Don. St. Joseph, top seed, 16-0. They've been the best. Staples at number 8. Those games will all be Friday. Number 7, Darien will take on number 2, Fairfield Ward. Number 6, Wilton at number 3, Ridgefield. And number 5, Ludlow will take on number 4, Greenwich. And the season largely over and done with now, with Staples, Darien, St. Joseph, Ridgefield, Ludlow, Greenwich all getting wins yesterday.
Right, and unlike the boys' side where there is no dominant team, there is clearly a dominant team on the girls' side, and that is the St. Joseph Cadets. 16-0, 48 points. They've scored, basically maximized their point total. Second place, Ward at 14-1-1, 43 points. But clearly, in this case, St. Joseph the team to beat.
Absolutely true. There's no doubt about it. And as we look into field hockey, more of the same there. We know that as of yesterday, Darien has clinched the number 1 seed, Wilton the number 2 seed. New Canaan, with their win yesterday, clinched a quarterfinal home game, and they came out flying. I mean, the Rams were outstanding yesterday. So certainly they're locked in, pretty close to being the 3 seed. Norwalk's right there as well at 10-3-0. They've also clinched a home game. Greenwich has the 4 seed, Staples the 5 seed, and then Ridgefield and Trumbull kind of round things out at this point.
Right, and just sort of an interesting quirk in the scheduling and in the results. The top 4 seeds in the FCAC for girls field hockey all came out of the FCAC Eastern Division. Greenwich topped the FCAC West with a record of 10-4. That's good for 20 points, and Greenwich actually tied with Norwalk with 20 points. Norwalk got the tiebreaker based on having defeated Greenwich head-to-head.
So that's where we sit right now in those playoff races. Of course, we have football on Friday as the Stanford Black Knights take on the St. Joseph Cadets. Both teams trying to hang around and at least make a state playoff run. But, you know, we so feel that we're down to the final four of the FCAC, you know, in a matter of speaking. Darien and New Canaan, of course, at the top with Trumbull and out of my mind it goes, Staples hanging around, trying to make things interesting. There you go.
Trumbull and Staples are still hanging around. Of course, they will both get their chance to play their way into the FCAC championship game. Trinity Catholic and St. Joe's, both technically still alive, but they're going to need a lot of help in order to get a playoff berth, at least in the FCAC.
But it will be fun to be at Boyle Stadium on Friday. We will be there starting early with coffee break, and then we'll have, of course, FCAC tailgate at 3:30, different start time, and FCAC game day at 4:30 before we jump into a big week of sports next week. Lots to do as we roll through next week with all of these semifinals and championship games, including volleyball a week from Saturday. So we'll be busy.
So if anyone out there has a large bag of Fisherman's Friends, you know, Mr. Adams might need a delivery.
I'm getting pulled off one game, the game tomorrow, so if my voice gets a break there, we'll see about the rest for sure. But hey, I did the 15 baseball games there in that 4 or 5 day stretch. So what the heck?
That was impressive.
We'll survive. We'll do okay. But I did quite invest in honey lemon cough drops. Ate quite a few of those. Before we go to break, there's a thing you wanted to get to, right?
Well, I did want to get to it. It's a Monroe story that I covered just in my in my role as Monroe Courier editor, but it does have a sports relation to it. Is a kid named Ryan Boyle. He's a cyclist, and he's heading to the Paralympics. He's the number 2 ranked Paralympic or paracyclist in the world. That is, and if you notice on the photo there, the bicycle he's riding actually has 3 wheels. It's got sort of like these, kind of like the outriggers to keep him stabilized. That's because he can't balance bicycle. 12 years ago, he was riding a big wheel trike at a birthday party in Monroe when a pickup truck hit him and dragged him. And he broke about 30 bones, was left with permanent brain injury, which is why he can't actually balance on a regular bicycle. But since then, he's made a recovery of his physical injuries, and it's great to see because he's graduated college now. He's training at the Colorado Springs Olympic Center, and he's written a book. So he's it's kind of just an inspiring story that that bad things can happen, but they don't have to keep you down. And so in this case, Ryan Boyle, as I said, ranked number 2 in the world in bicycling and on the Paralympic World Championship. It's kind of a tour that they do also.
Yeah.
So he'll be down in Rio de Janeiro in 2016, and hopefully gonna bring home the gold. As he said, I talked to him the other day. He said he'd be thrilled with any medal, but obviously any competitor wants to win. When they when the gun sounds, you want to win. It's nice to say it's an honor to be here, but when the clock's running, you want to win. So.
Absolutely true. Well, best of luck to him, and a young man, just 21. So good luck to Ryan Boyle, and go get him and keep us posted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hopefully, well, you know what? We'll get a little closer. We'll have him on.
By the way, not bad writing there.
Well, you like that? I thought it was good. You
Don
read
can
more
handle
at MonroeCourier.com.
Absolutely, it is there, MonroeCourier.com. All right, Mario Recupito is running the controls today and doing a far more outstanding job than the people who normally run it. I'm only kidding. We'll take a timeout. Come back with more Nutmeg Sports right after this on a Wednesday on the HAN Network.
Darien Sports Shop is a unique store because it's a family store. A busy mom can come in with kids in tow and find everything she needs for them, and even find a dress for herself for Saturday night. And if she's in a rush, she can simply go home and order it from us that night. We'll deliver it the next day. The Darien Sports Shop. We're pretty on the outside and amazing on the inside. Conveniently located with free and easy parking at 1127 Post Road, Darien, Connecticut. Or shop us online at dariensport.com.
It's time to come back to hometown banking, where people are taken into account, not just balances. Where community comes first. A place where there's more than one kind of interest. Where automation will never replace consideration. Where they not only know your name, they know your dog's name too. It's time to expect more. It's time to bank well. Bank smart. Bank local. Bank well.
In Pound Ridge since 1993, the Wine Connection is one of America's best wine shops. Visit our beautiful store for the greatest in wine and knowledgeable service. With wonderful values from around the world to collectibles for your cellar, we are your one-stop source. Visit our online shop at wineconn.com and make sure to sign up for email updates. With great offers, new arrivals, and special events, don't miss all the action at the Wine Connection, including tastings every weekend. The Wine Connection, located at 32 Westchester Avenue, Pound Ridge, New York.
You are watching the HAN Network, and you're not alone. 102,000 viewers have enjoyed the HAN Network in just the last 6 weeks. Advertise on the network that reaches Fairfield County, Connecticut's most engaged audience. Contact Jessica Murrin, Advertising Director, at 203-273-7312 or email jessica@han.network. You are watching...
Welcome back to Nutmeg Sports on the HAN Network. With Donald Eng, I'm Rob Adams. Happy you decided to join us on a Wednesday edition, getting ready for a football Friday, but soccer first. So footy tomorrow, the FUTBOL style, and then American football on Friday. I know, I said footy, and you're thinking
footy.
Aussie.
I'm ready to go up for a high mark.
I know, you're thinking Aussie rules football, which is great, by the way.
Which really is.
How are things? And you keep up on Aussie rules football, don't you? Not as much anymore?
Well, no. I'm just a Collingwood Magpies fan because I, like a whole lot of other early teens in the 80s, what do? You're home. It's midnight. You turn on the ESPN and they're showing Aussie rules football. And I just remember two things I remember. One, it's always raining when you watch Aussie football, and two, they don't anymore. But at the time, they had the best dressed referees in the world with the jackets and the fedoras. So that's just.
I love those officials. They were the
great?
best. They were the best. So well dressed, and then they'd come out and do that, as you said.
And they appear to just kind of like they almost. The official rules of Aussie football are almost like what you would play in your backyard. Okay, when the ball goes out of bounds, I'm just going to throw it backwards over my head and put it back into play. So anyway, any Collingwood Magpies fans out there, go Collingwood.
All right, shifting over to the football schedule for the week. We'll have much more about it on Friday on FCAC Game Day at 4:30 from Stamford on Friday. One game to get things going tomorrow night, and it's fairly local, Watertown and Naugatuck, right up the road, 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. So a Thursday night game, like the NFL.
Right. Naugatuck, with a bit of a disappointing season this year, they were expected to make a little bit more noise in Class L and in the Naugatuck Valley League. But, they're, Coach Bruno, their former Bunnell coach, well, he'll have that program straightened out sooner than later, I expect.
Friday, plenty of games in the FCAC, a big schedule, in fact, with 7 games on the docket. Bridgeport Central is at Ridgefield. Ridgefield just knocked off Staples. I can't see how they struggle here.
It's hard to see how, but it's you're dealing with teenagers. You just never know. It all could hinge on how the bus ride went.
Greenwich and Fairfield Ludlow, and I kind of feel bad for the Falcons at 7 o'clock on Friday night, although they'll do their homework, they'll do their best, but the Cardinals, I have a feeling, are going to be out for some blood after losing to the Rams.
They will be, and I think that game against the Rams has kind of demonstrated to the young Cardinals. You don't think of Greenwich as having a young team because it doesn't happen very often, but in this case it is. The young Cardinals realize they can play with anyone. When they show up, when they play disciplined, when they play smart football, they can play with any team in the state.
It seems like it'll be a Call of the Wild game on Friday night at Norwalk as Norwalk takes on New Canaan. Rams and Bears.
Rams and Bears. It's hard to make a case for Norwalk, but
it is hard to make. Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. St. Joe's and Stamford, 6:30. I think that one's got a chance to be good. Stamford needs to have some health. St. Joseph can play for sure, but there's a chance there.
Yeah, Stanford, as we were saying earlier in the year, Stanford has been building the last couple of seasons. They haven't quite had the season they were hoping for this year, but this is not the same Stanford team that you would have seen 5 years ago. This Stanford team has players, talent all over the field. They're well coached, and of course St. Joe's. That's always the case for the Cadets. But again, that's a very competitive game.
Danbury and Fairfield Ward, the Hatters have really yet to find any rhythm to their season. Fairfield Ward has been very up and down. The Hatters will just have to play some good football. They can beat Fairfield Ward, but Ward's pretty good.
Yeah, the thing with with the Fairfield schools. You know, they tend to go together. Ward, I thought, was looking better earlier in the season. They've kind of slipped a bit in recent weeks, but you know, again, it's yet another competitive game.
Darien and Wilton on Friday night. Tough odds for the Warriors.
Yeah, it's hard to make a case. Darien, they're rolling through this FCX schedule. I expect them to secure probably one of the top 2 seeds in the Class LL tournament. You know, there's always a chance. You can get picked off, and of course they've got the Turkey Bowl ahead of them. But they will be the favorite in every game they play the rest of the year.
I kind of like this game, McMahon and Trumbull, because yes, McMahon is very hit or miss. I understand that. Trumbull, has been playing at a pretty good level all year, but I guess I like the factor that McMahon is a you never know kind of team.
McMahon is a you never know kind of team, and Trumbull actually has surprised a number of people, including me. I was surprised at their win over Greenwich. They've looked very good, and they've gotten better from week to week. So I mean, you know, early in the year they had a little hiccup against Trinity, and then beat Greenwich. So you know, Trumbull is another team. They're in control of their own destiny in that FCAC playoff race. If they win out, they will play in the championship game.
Couple of NVL games for you. Ansonia hosting Oxford, as well as Derby at Seymour. A couple of schools not too far out of our region, of course, Valley Gazette schools. And then on to the SEC, Cheshire at Notre Dame, West Haven, Amity at Shelton, Prep of Fairfield, that is, at Hamden. East Haven at Foreign Law at Branford, Lyman Hall at Guilford. North Haven at Hill House, and Xavier at Daniel Hand. So a big SEC schedule on Friday. Massac at Pomperog from the SWC, Stratford at Newtown, Brookfield at Weston, Bethel at New Milford, and New Fairfield is at Bunnell. Now moving to Saturday, well, just one FCAC game, and it is an all-Stamford affair because they don't have lights at Trinity Catholic. The Crusaders at Alumni Field hosting the West Hill Vikings.
Right. You've got to like Trinity in this game, and as we were saying the other day, Trinity in very good shape. They're still in the FCAC championship race, but very well positioned to make some noise in the state Class S playoffs this year, particularly coming out of the FCAC where they've been facing double L schools week in, week out. You know, if they can finally get a chance to play schools with similar enrollment numbers and similar player rosters, who knows? We could see a state championship this year coming back to Stamford.
From the SEC, West Haven at Wilbur-Cross, and Joel Barlow from the SWC at Notre Dame of Fairfield. So big weekend coming up in high school football as we really kind of turn the corner.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of that SEC, particularly Wilbur-Cross, they could be in an interesting position perhaps for next season because the SEC has added a 20th team in football. That is the Hyde Career Whitney Tech Co-op. Now that school is considered Class M because of the enrollments of the three schools.
Correct.
And that now puts the SEC in a position where they may have to shuffle the alignments a little bit. Traditionally, they had the murderer's row of Division I, and then Division II, which is the smaller schools that had been traditionally dominated by North Haven and Hill House. But with the Hyde Whitney Career Co-op going into Division II, that could open the door for a North Haven possibly to move to Division I. That's been talked about for a while, and also the most likely candidate of the Division I teams to drop down to Division II would be Wilbur-Cross. They have the smallest enrollment of any Division I school, and they've also traditionally struggled against the other Division I programs in the SEC. So a lot of wheels in play, in motion in the SEC.
One last thing I want to get to before we call it a day, but we'll take a quick break and come back and put a wrap on it. One last little national meets kind of local thing that I think we can all think about. We'll do that when we come back on Nutmeg Sports right after this on the HAN Network.
When you experience a sports injury, you want to get better and fast. Coastal Ortho Express gives you direct access to orthopedic care quickly. Their physicians are fellowship trained in sports medicine at world-class universities and are also team doctors for area football teams. For specialized personal care of sports injuries, go to Coastal Ortho Express. Open Monday through Saturday in the iPark building, 761 Main Avenue in Norwalk, or coastalorthoexpress.com. Coastal Orthopedics, keeping you on the move.
Back to school means back to busy, and Stewart's Market can save you precious time by stocking all of your favorite essentials under one roof. For a healthy start to school, we have all the ingredients. Walter Stewart's, your family-owned fresh local market, 229 Elm Street and at stewartsmarket.com.
Do you do a lot of running around but get nowhere when you're buying a car? Visit Pamby Chrysler Jeep Dodge and Ram for the one-stop buying experience and stop spinning your wheels.
Football University, the nation's leading football training experience, is now accepting applications for its 2015 camps. Our elite faculty of NFL coaches and top professionals teach position-specific on the field and in the classroom to improve your football IQ and help you reach your full potential as a player. Apply today at footballuniversity.org. Football University, where technique plus talent beats talent alone.
Welcome back to Nutmeg Sports on the HAN Network. You know, 99% of the time we talk local sports, we talk FCAC, we talk Connecticut, but obviously Game 1 of the World Series was last night. There's a local angle in that it's regional, a lot of Met fans in the area, and a smattering of Kansas City Royal fans around here as well that root for both, actually.
Yes, actually, that I had that question posed awkwardly. Well, I replied awkwardly, but I had that question posed to me last night. If you actually had to choose, which team would you root for? And it's like, gosh, I've been a Royals fan since George Brett in 1980 when we had first moved up from the Bronx to Connecticut, and I just started seeing if George Brett could hit 390. I've been a KC Royals fan since then. And then my first Major League game that I ever actually went to in person, George Foster won it with a double in the bottom of the ninth against the Braves for the Mets in '83. And wow, it's like, why not ask me which one of my dogs I like better? It's just,
So you really don't have a rooting interest? You kind of mix?
You know,
I thought you were a Royals fan first and foremost.
51-49, you got to go first love, right?
I think so.
It's close, but like I told Sean Saylor last night on Twitter, you know, when he cornered me and pinned me down for an answer, you got to go with your first love, even no matter how close it is. I said 51-49. It could be 50.1, but yeah, go KC.
All right, well, go KC. I agree with that as well. But all that being said, obviously a fascinating Game 1 last night. The longest Game 1 in history, the longest World Series game. I mean, there were a bunch of things that I was fascinated by the fact that the
most commercials in World Series
well,
history.
there's that as well. But the inside the park home run to lead off the game, the first time that's happened since 1903.
I was about to say ever.
Yeah, pretty much.
I couldn't imagine that had ever happened. That an inside the park home run on the first pitch of the World Series. Who was that? Like Wee Willie Keeler?
You know, I forget now. I looked up who it was. For last inside the park home run in any World Series game, I believe, was 1929. So, you know, I get into that kind of stuff. But there was other stuff that made it so fascinating. First the Mets coming back on the Royals coming back on the Mets in the ninth inning with the big Alex Gordon home run.
First blown save for Familia in ever.
Exactly.
Since the spring.
The walk-off win for the Royals, a little redemption for Eric Hosmer, considering he had a big error in the game that allowed the Mets to take the lead. And that's the thing about the Royals; they play very fundamental baseball. Anyway, I'm too long-winded in what I'm trying to get at. You know, I feel for Fox for one thing. I really do. Because I'm in this business, and I've been in this business a long time, I feel for what they went through. I've been there.
Right.
You know, I've been there when the phones don't work, and I've had to spend a broadcast like this calling a game, and that's the truth. I've called full games holding a phone to my ear. I've had press box, Greenwich's press box, their power went out upwards of 5 times one night during a game. Makes for a lot of headaches, so I do feel for them.
I can just imagine a production truck when everything went black, and but you know, to their credit, they recovered pretty well.
Yeah, it's a horrible feeling. And by the way, everybody calm down about Joe Buck. I think everybody gets too wound up about him. And you're taking a small sample of Matt Vasgersian and making him into being Vin Scully. Stop. It's just not the case. Just not the case. But the bigger thing I want to get to is this story about Edison Volquez and his father. His father passing away before the game last night. And there were varying versions. Did Volquez know about his father's passing and pitch the game? Did he not know, and was it kept from him? There have been varying versions of this story. The latest I've heard is that indeed it was after the start that he found out. Bob Nightingale in the USA Today writing that Volquez learned of his father's death after pitching in the game, which is why his family went to Fox and said, please don't mention it. We don't want him to hear it, because pitchers and players do go into the clubhouse during the game, and the TV's on there. Here's my bigger issue, Don. Yes, Fox acknowledged this. They didn't mention it. In fact, I saw Kenny Rosenthal tweet that Fox would not mention it for that very reason alone. But it was still all over Twitter. It was still all over the internet. What's it take, Don, for some security guard in the bowels of Kauffman Stadium to be looking at his phone? Volquez walks by and he goes, Edison, so sorry to hear. If you're going to keep it, I think you had to keep it from everyone as best as you could.
You could, but obviously in this day and age, that's just really not a realistic possibility. In my opinion, you have to inform the player simply because you are taking that chance of having a disaster of some well-wishing fan or as you said, security guard, telling him how sorry they are, and then he finds out that way. It's a World Series game, but it is a game, and life and family has to come first.
There's the whole question of would his father want him to pitch and all, and I think most athletes are going to say, yes, I'm going to give it everything I've got. I can remember Paul O'Neill playing in Game 4 of the '99 World Series after learning of his father's death. Brett Favre played a pretty famous Monday Night Football game and shredded the Raiders to the tune of 399 yards and 4 touchdowns, again after learning of the death of his dad.
Yeah, but it's the Raiders.
Well, there is that. Don't let Mike Suppy hear you say that. But, there is all. I think Volquez still goes on and pitches. I understand that's such a top priority thing, but my concern was with how it was handled journalistically, and that's why I wanted to bring it up on the show today. And with yourself being a journalist who I do respect, at least somewhat, how it was handled, I give Fox credit for not talking about it, but I thought they were in a tough spot as well.
They were in a tough spot because obviously they were then getting preempted and scooped on a major story developing out of the World Series. And you make these decisions. These decisions, unfortunately, have to be made on a case-by-case and media outlet by media outlet basis. You can't just blanket say that no media outlet will report it. In that case, the onus would have fallen on the family to not disclose the information. But there's just no way to keep something like that out of social media, particularly in the World Series. I mean, it's one thing for someone local to have that news kind of be suppressed for a couple hours, but when it's like that, when it's on social media, there's just no way to keep it away from everybody.
In fact, there's a quote from Royals GM Dayton Moore again in Bob Nightingale's piece. He just knew he was upset being taken out of Game 1 of the World Series Tuesday night, and when he walked into the Royals clubhouse in the 7th inning, 7 full innings before the Royals would win, that's where Royals GM Dayton Moore was awaiting him. Moore ushered Volquez into manager Ned Yost's office and closed the door. And that's how they broke the news to him. So, in any event, very sad, and just kind of made me look certainly at the way we cover these things. There's a life and death, but there's not a life and death when it comes to sports. This was not personally a life and death story of, how do you tell Edison Volquez? I think as an athlete, I would have been pretty furious if I found out 60,000 people in Kauffman Stadium, not that it holds 60,000, but that many people know in Kauffman Stadium, and I don't.
Right, that I was literally the last person to know in North America. That would would have been pretty upsetting for me also.
I think it could have been handled differently. I'm not criticizing the family, but I think there would have been a way to keep that information on the down low. But I know in this day and age with social media, it is very, very difficult, but I do feel to me it created some questions in my mind that I wanted to bounce off you.
Right, and unfortunately those are questions with no answer because there's just any number of ways to handle it, and it's never going to be perfect because you simply can't keep a lid on information like that in this day and age. In
fact, I saw a Deadspin report that only one other Royal did know about the situation, that no one else knew. In fact, and that was all I knew of. That. Only one other person knew. So, there you go. Don, good show today. See you Friday for Tailgate?
You'll see me, I believe so, Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on my calendar somewhere.
Sounds good. thanks to Mario as well for helping us out, directing the show as always. That'll do it for Nutmeg Sports. We ran a few minutes late today, but I wanted to get to that little story. We will see you Friday for football at Stanford's Boyle Stadium. We'll see you tomorrow for soccer at Darien High School. Josh and Murph on the call. I'll join them later on. For Mario, Donald Eng, all of us here at the HAN Network, I'm Rob Adams. Coffee break tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. But for now, thanks for watching Nutmeg Sports on the HAN Network. So long, everyone.